Still on target 1.2. Question 4 gives you 3 different problems and asks you to find the constant of proportionality for each of the following problems. In part A and B they give you equations, and then part C gives you a table. So we'll start looking at part A. It gives you the equation y equals 2 over x to the third power. Even though there's that x to the third power on the bottom, we still do this just like the last problem. To find the constant of proportionality, all you do is you look at the number that is on top of the equation. So we have y equals 2 over x to the third. So that means our constant k is equal to 2. That's our constant of proportionality. Then we do the exact same thing in part B. We look at the top number and we see that the constant of proportionality for part B is 17. So regardless of what's on the bottom, you look to the constant on the top. Okay. Now, if for some reason you had a number like 2 on the top over 3x, then you would see it's 2 over 3x. You got to think about that 3 as being part of a fraction there. So it would be kind of like 2 over 3. But generally, you're just going to have one number on the top. If there is a number on the bottom that's in front of the x term, then you will include that as sort of the bottom part of the fraction. Okay, since there's no numbers in front of the x's here, then we just assume it's one number on top, and we go ahead with that. Now, with part C, when they give you a table, we have to do a little thinking about what it means for an inverse function and looking at the general type of equation, which if you watched the video for number 3, you saw this already, where we saw that inversely proportional functions have the form y equals k over x. Okay, and x can have exponents sometimes, but as long as you have a k over an x, that's all we need. All right, and again, y and x can be other variables as well. But when we look at this equation, y equals k over x, we can do a little manipulation here to rearrange the equation to get a better understanding of how we can find k, in particular when we have a table or a graph. Because if you look at that table, there's all sorts of numbers. We have to figure out how they relate to each other. So the way we figure this out is if you look at the equation, and if we multiply both sides of that equation by x, then we see we have x times y equals k over x times x, and that divided by x and times x that appear on the right side where we have k over x times x, those x's cancel each other out because one is being divided by and the other is being multiplied by. So they cancel each other out and we're just left with xy is equal to k. So this is really useful because that means if for any problem, if we know the x and y at a given point, then we can find the k value. We just multiply the x and y. So to see what that looks like, we look at the table and we pick any of those pairs. As long as we have one x and one y that go together, we pick them. So I'm going to start with 3, 4. So x equals 3, y equals 4. I'm going to use that rearranged version of the inverse proportional problem, and we see that x times y equals k. So we do 3 times 4. That should give us our k, so k is equal to 12. All right, that's the constant of proportionality for this problem. To double check this and make sure it works for all the values, we can pick another pair. So let's say we just picked 8 and 1.5. And if you do 8 times 1.5, you also get k equals 12. So it does work. And this is the way you solve the problems when you have a table or when you have a graph. If you have a graph, just pick a point on that graph, a point on the curve, and if you know what the x value is at that point and the y value is, you probably want to pick a point where it's got nice even values, like maybe a point like 2, 5 or 3, 4 or 10, 8, whatever the point may be on the graph. As long as the numbers are nice, just multiply the x and y together and that will give you the constant. So that's the way you do it on a table or graph. And then as we saw in part A and B, you just look at the top number in the equation to get it for when it's in equation form. Okay, so that's how you find the constant of proportionality. And if you have any more questions, just leave a comment, send me a message, whatever you need to do, and then we'll move ahead to the next target.